Hello and welcome to my garage, and also the place where the Corolla has been living for the last couple of months. The last time that I posted a video about the status of this car, I was just starting to do the radiator upgrade and I was kind of investigating a little clunk down there, and that was months ago. And since then, what I've done is I've yanked out the original radiator that I had put in here a few years back. The reason why I yanked it out is because it had a crack on the bottom of it and it was leaking radiator fluid, which I was able to smell after driving around and then determined that there was an actual puddle of radiator fluid under there. So I knew it needed to be addressed right away. The plan was to install a radiator out of a Honda Civic. This is a dual core Honda Civic radiator that has a fan shroud and a nice performance fan. And of course, the way these things go is it was not a simple installation, and it ended up being a heck of a lot more complicated and time consuming than I expected. Some of the things that I realized was, how do I fit this thing? And it involved doing a lot of cutting, measuring, fitting, cutting again to try to get this thing to fit properly in there. Because again, this is out of a Honda Civic, not out of a Toyota Corolla. And so it didn't quite fit in there nicely. And I had to figure out where I wanted to put it into this engine bay. And ultimately I ended up deciding that I wanted to put that radiator here on this side away from the headers. That radiator that was sitting inside the car before kind of had a Mickey Mouse radiator mount that I had made originally. So this was the original radiator mount that I had bent into shape. As you can see, it wasn't originally like this, but I bent it into shape to fit that radiator that is currently leaking. I didn't want to do kind of a Mickey Mouse setup like that again. So I wanted to actually make some nice radiator mounts, which is what I ended up doing here. And so these ones, I ended up cutting out the spaces and making room for it. It looks a lot better, but man, this stuff takes such a long time. Yeah, it was definitely not just one weekend and call it done. The other thing I wanted to take care of is the radiator fan. The radiator fan on this setup was wired up by the original person who did my wiring loom. They wired it up to be on all the time. And that was because they couldn't integrate the fan controller into the 20 valve blacktop ECU. As soon as the ignition gets put into the on position, that fan would kick on. And I did not want to have a fan that was on continuously. So with this new setup, I got a fan controller that is temperature activated. So this is also from Mishimoto. I wired all the stuff in this last weekend. I went through and cleaned up all the wires. I spliced it, connected, soldered, shielded, got everything set up. The temperature sensor is going to be coming from this in-between radiator hose setup. It's going to get the temperature, send it to the controller, and that's what's going to kick the fan on and off. Well, hopefully that means that I won't have a radiator fan running all the time, because I'm pretty sure that that also saps up some of the power because it's spinning the fan at all times when it shouldn't be spinning it. So the things that are still left to do are to install the radiator in here. I need to make an aluminum shield to block this area that now is going to be empty. But before I do any of that, I am addressing another issue while I'm in here, and that is my front motor mount. So this is a very common weakness with the AE82, is the front motor mount. This is my most recent iteration, and this is a factory front motor mount that I filled with 3M window weld. A lot of the guys on the forums highly recommended doing it this way. This is the original OEM style, and you can tell that it's trash. I mean, I can bend it with my fingers, which is very disappointing. This was my previous attempt, and the way I did this one is I cut out all of this rubber bushing in here, and then I filled it with the energy polyurethane mix that you make. It worked okay, but the problem is that the center ended up busting loose, and so it's still stiff, but it's wobbly in there. This setup here, I've been letting it sit and cure. It's been curing for about 48 hours and it feels like it's just about ready to go in. So hopefully tomorrow I'm gonna put this in, and then I can put the radiator in, and then I can build the shroud on this other side, get it all plugged in, get the stuff buttoned up, and hopefully get this car running and on the road again. So that's the current status of the car. There's a lot of little things to be done inside the engine bay. I know another future project that I want to tackle is I want to take the battery and relocate it into the trunk and switch to a lithium-ion battery, because this lead acid battery is super huge and heavy, and I want to just free up the space for maybe a future intake, or just open up the engine bay and take that big heavy weight out of the engine bay. But otherwise, the car has been sitting here. It's been depressing and embarrassing because I haven't been able to drive it. This is honestly one of my favorite cars to drive. This engine is amazing. This car is amazing to drive, and it's been hurting me just seeing it sitting in the garage doing nothing. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks or so, the car will be back on the road again, and we'll be making more ITB videos. So that's the current state of the Corolla. I haven't been ignoring you. It's just been, this has been a much bigger project than I expected. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.